Germans call it liquid bread. In Africa, it is brewed from sorghum and millet. Slavic people call it kvass and make it from rye. And in the Western European tradition, barley and wheat are the main ingredients. Of course, what I'm talking about is beer. No one knows exactly when beer was invented, but we do know that the first beer was enjoyed far back in time. An early quote from those days said that the drink had a side effect of making you feel exhilarated, wonderful, and blissful. The process of making beer is simple, and anyone can make beer for themselves at home. In this video, you will see how you can be enjoying your own beer in as little as a month. Brian Vandermark, home brewer, goes through 6 steps when making a large batch of beer. First, he needs to collect the equipment to get ready. Next, he will culture a large amount of yeast overnight. After this, the mash will be prepared, and then the boil, which is a good time for a beer tasting, and finally, the fermentation. To make 10 gallons of chocolate stout, we need a large pot, a propane burner, and a special filter and cooling apparatus. Of course, we also need a few spoons, a smaller pot and heavy-duty thermometer, sanitized plastic tubing for transporting the liquids, a large fermenter, the fermentation locks to keep bacteria from contaminating the beer, and a place to store the batch while it ferments. A home brewer's recipe will change over time as it is perfected. For this brew, Brian is using 20 pounds of English pale malt as the base for his stout. To this, he has added 1 pound of flaked barley for body. For flavor, he is using 3 types of crystal malts, 2 pounds of light, a half pound of medium, and a half pound of dark crystal malt. Cocoa powder, a half pound, is used for flavor, along with 1.5 pounds of chocolate malt.
This bag of crushed malt was purchased at a local brew store. The pale malt is crushed at the store into a mixture of flour and grain husks. The grain husks provide a natural filter at the end of the mash for extracting a clear liquid free of particles.
It's like breakfast. This is Irish moss. It's actually a type of dried seaweed. These are little particles of crushed dried seaweed, and you add this to the boil at the beginning, and the purpose of this is a clarifying agent.
Calcium carbonate, also known as chalk, is used to reduce the acidity of the mash. Calcium sulfate, also known as gypsum, is used to increase the acidity of the mash if the acidity is too low for the enzymes to do their job. I use litmus strips with an indicator that tells us the pH of the mash. Here is the color range I need for a proper mash. If the mash is too acidic, I will get yellowish colors in the output, and then I can add calcium carbonate to adjust the pH into the proper range. Here is a nylon filter bag which I use later during the boil as a giant tea bag. Hops plugs are pre-weighed half-ounce measures of fresh pressed hops flowers. For simplicity, I use half-ounce increments of hops in my recipes. This way I can simply count the number of plugs I am adding to know the exact weight to fulfill the recipe of the beer. They have very strong floral, herbal, and sometimes citrusy aromas. I use fresh spring water in my recipes because tap water has too many impurities. I will add a pre-calculated amount of fresh spring water to the mash tun and then heat it to 160 degrees Fahrenheit.
worship yeast. Beer is yeast, yeast is beer. Now the first thing we're going to do here is we are going to prepare a mini brew, but this wort we're making, this whole process is very similar to what we're going to do tomorrow. Basically, you're just boiling some malt liquid, adding some diammonium phosphate so it'll sterilize, and then we're going to be pouring it into fermenters. And these are our fermenters. They're essentially the same design. It's a sealed jar with an airlock at the top that keeps microorganisms from being able to get inside while allowing gas that's being produced by the living organisms inside to escape.
I monitor the temperature of the water as it's heating so that I can add the malt extract at the right time. The powdered malt extract I will use for the culture wort is similar to the wort that I will be producing tomorrow. Some brewers use extract throughout the production of their beer instead of brewing with grains, but this means that they have less control and less fun.